Hi everyone, Kingthony God Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Conway project, From King to a God. This is a new full-length LP from Buffalo rapper and Griselda Records co-founder Conway. At this point, I think it goes without saying just how much dominance the Griselda cartel has shown in the hip-hop underground for a few years now, with each project, whether it's from West Side, Benny, or Conway, being a topic of discussion among musicians and hip-hop heads young and old. Not hard to see why that's the case too, as there's something comfortably classic and also refreshingly nasty about the collective's witty coat-covered raps. Griselda creatively echoes the best aesthetics of the drug kingpin rap of the 90s and 2000s, even if the songwriting substance isn't always there, because the vibe is just enough sometimes, I suppose. Considering that, I have had a hard time as of late buying into the Griselda hype through the group's most viral releases. It doesn't really make sense to me that a project like Supreme Blientel gets so much focus, meanwhile Benny the Butcher is a better lyricist than West Side by every measure. Meanwhile, Conway gets the least attention of the three, it would seem, despite having the most solid mixtape catalog. Either way, this new record is a treat from the machine. He does not have too many to his name thus far. There was an album he dropped last year, and then he put out a mini LP earlier in 2020 with production from Big Ghost Ltd. Now, shortly after, we have From King to a God. Previously, if you asked me what my favorite Griselda-related project was so far, I would say maybe the collective What Would Sheen Gun Do project last year, but now my answer to that same question would be this. For sure, this thing kind of wowed me, mostly because it's everything I have been enjoying about Griselda's projects generally so far, with a little bit extra. The eccentricity as well as the dramatic and artsy presentation of West Side's work, along with the memorable and murderous bars of a Benny album, but with some special attention paid to hooks and lyrical focus and song structure. There's also a variety of moods and sounds across the LP as well, which enhances the flow quite well. Conway also nabbed some truly standout features for this thing too. From King to a God is also 12 tracks long, with a few of those tracks being skits on the standard track list, and that does not leave a whole lot of room for duds. Now, I will admit the intro to me does drag on a little bit toward the end, and lyrically it seems like a general mix of things you would hear bragged about on just about any Griselda project. Stacking paper this, iced rolly that, I'm a walking business, I can't be controlled, etc., etc. But Conway's delivery is undeniably solid, plus it's an effective teaser in that it leaves me wanting more, and things do pick up immediately from here. There is Fear of God featuring Dej Loaf, whose bright anthemic lead vocals ring like church bells. The production on this track is a mix of righteous and raw. Even though the synth sequences are a little rudimentary, this truly inspirational mood still comes across. Hit Boy does it again effectively. There are also these fat kicks on the track and click-clack snares and hi-hats that sound like a clock ticking fast, plus lyrical standouts like Look What I Became, God Don't Make Mistakes See, I'm about to have Peter, Robin, Paul to pay me. Moving on from here, Lemon sonically comes off like your typical Griselda affair. Fat, woozy, compressed, intoxicating beat with droning keys and dusty piano samples, but somehow sounding filthier than it ever has before. The hook I wasn't crazy about when I first heard it as a single, but in the context of the record, other tracks do have similarly unhinged choruses, the song Front Lines specifically. Then going deeper into the track, the bars are equal parts inspiring and sinister, with Conway rapping about friends who have caught cases, one of whose violent ways has separated him from his kids effectively. Then Conway uses these losses to inspire his will to succeed, but despite how self-destructive this lifestyle can be, lyrically anyway, on this track, Conway doesn't really seem to want to distance himself from it. Then we have an absolutely sick verse from Method Man, one of his best features in a while. Creative flow, very druggy, loaded with wordplay. One of my favorite standouts from it is they want the old meth, so this is the prequel. We then have Doe and Damani, which is another moment on the record that feels kind of typical for a Griselda project. Two spare non-songs combined through an awkward snippet transition. The second half of the track, production-wise and lyrically, is far superior to the first. Thankfully, this is the only time something like this happens on the record. Following this, we get the much better Juvenile Hell, which is a deadly cut with multiple features on it. Havoc of Mobb Deep not only does the hook, but production too. Flea Lord and Lloyd Banks are on the track as well, and there's just some excellent chemistry between all these guys. One aggressive, deadly verse after another, complementary vibes and styles with distinct voices, and to take it back to the beat, damn, that booming bass, that eerie, ringing two-chord progression, the head-bobbing groove, there's not really anything I don't like about this track. Then Conway's deranged charisma is on full display with the track Frontlines. More dusty beats, massive bass, twisted piano samples. It is a formula that works. Then Conway's bars display him as being in the thick of this chaotic world of music industry stuff, drugs, street violence. The unsettling hook features Conway singing where he just sounds like a man who has nothing to lose. Plus, the way he shifts between the two verses of the song is interesting too. The first of which he sounds cold-blooded as hell and then goes on to just sound out of his mind, as lyrically he's going in on police violence, our racist justice system, and rats, tying them all together. Then the song ANZA provides an interesting change of pace with the beat having a pretty clubby appeal. Chilly synth phrases on this one, smooth bass and very danceable rhythms. This combined with Conway's flows, it reminds me of like 50 Cent during his commercial peak, as well as other bling era rappers but with a grittier presentation. There is a slick feature from Armani Caesar that does the track a lot of justice, and overall, this vibe is not really something I expected out of this record or any Griselda project, honestly, but it still goes over well and shows Conway's versatility as an artist. The surprises in this track list continue with the song Seen Everything But Jesus featuring Freddie Gibbs, which, given the background of these two, you would expect some aggressive, grimy banger where it's just one line after another of coke from both artists. But here, Conway actually gets sentimental about friends that he's lost, whether that be to the streets or the system. And it's legitimately moving and compelling the way Conway retells these stories in his own words. Then Freddie Gibbs matches the energy of this track really well with a melodic flow. It's not often that Freddie Gibbs is singing and singing well on a track, but vocally I would say he kind of kills it here while also showing off a little bit of Tupac influence. Then after this we have the song Spurs 3 featuring Benny the Butcher and West Side Gun. When these three team up on a single track as Griselda, there is going to be untold amounts of chaos energy. WWCD thrived almost simply off of that. We pretty much get another dose of that here, which is not a bad thing. Stellar complementary chemistry off the charts with what sounds like a wind chime-like beat, this very fragmented and loose melodic progression that, despite how disorienting it is, some clear melodies and I guess just chords come out of it. Then things get tied up at the end with Forever Droppin' Tears, which features some production from, believe it or not, Eric Sermon. Sonically, the track comes off like a melancholy synth funk dreamscape. Not sure if I should dance or cry to it. But then narratively, Conway comes through with some of the most immense verses on the entire project. He's really like pouring his heart out, really ripping it to pieces just to put out what he is putting out here. It's a refreshing moment on the album because it's rare you hear a dude who comes off as hard as Conway does on a track, then switch gears and start unpacking all of this regret and loss of life and how it has negatively impacted him mentally and emotionally, and in such a thorough way too. We have El Camino featured on the song, who presents some very nice smooth vocals that kind of play to the mellow vibe of the track. There are a couple bonus cuts on the back end that are just okay, but the core album is pretty watertight. Not going to say what Conway has delivered here is above and beyond the artistic parameters of any Griselda project so far. That's not true. But From King to a God does feel like a distilled and leveled up version of something we've heard before. And I can't really deny an improvement. Now, whether or not Conway and company take it beyond this point is up in the air, but right now I would say that's pretty likely, given that there are no signs of these guys stopping, and there are lots of much bigger projects coming down the pipe. Feeling a light 8 on this one, Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Conway the Machine, forever.